here in winter of 37. Not a lot of movement in terms of the economic stuff. The research, yeah, there's been movement, and in fact, in building up armies and research, etc., the Axis has gotten itself up to a +6 balance of power modifier. And that means we can actually go into Albania, and I'm going to mark that I'm attacking Albania with this, and the Germans are going into Poland at the same time. You know, this is about as high as we can expect the chart to go, and this is about as well as we can expect to get a jump over the Russians in terms of the point 5. We're going to offer them the pact. This is going to really set the game in motion, and maybe a little earlier than we would like. But you know, I'm almost up to my armor for Germany. I have as many subs as I can get, as far as I can tell. It's hard to tell because there's additional counters over here for some of these research categories that aren't reflected on the sheet, and who knows, you know. But yeah, I think this is as good as I'm going to be able to do. I really don't like seeing Sweden completely burnish. You know, I could start throwing diplomatic actions into there and trying to reduce that. But there's some danger of things getting kind of out of hand with Greece here. The thing with Albania is, even once it succeeds, it's not going to cause too many problems. There's a 1-turn support level bonus, and it doesn't look like there's any permanent aggression bonus for it. So maybe it's worth not going into Poland right now, because again, we start the timer on Poland if we go in. On the other hand, if we wait until the Germans have, you know, things that they want here, like the full armor, is that really that big of an advantage? Not really. That, I think, means an extra 3-5 armor. And it would be neat to have, but I've expended a lot of effort to get to it, though. That's the problem. What about West Wall? Yeah, we're already starting to work our way through West Wall as well. But again, that's not that big a deal if I'm not going east. You know, we might have time to meet those goals and to meet other goals. And I'd kind of like to get playing on the main game and get the conversion into place. So what the hell, you know? I don't know. Italy's not going to be able to take on something like Yugoslavia. I'm pretty sure of that. That's too big a defensive value at this point in the game. If Germany kind of allows Italy to grab things and doesn't expand on their own, I think Italy could conceivably get up there, especially if you get your balance of power up here. But, I mean, what are we looking at? Italy's balance of power values or their support values aren't very high. So we're looking at about 8. Going into Yugoslavia, make it 12. That drops me down to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That could start a war. And I think we're better off starting the war, allowing the Germans to take Yugoslavia within the context of a world war, and trying to get the expansion there. And, you know, we'll see. One of the problems with this all, though, is if you start the war at this point, you may be accelerating a world at war in an ugly fashion. The victory conditions, I think, are still based on the same time limits. Maybe they get modified. I don't know. God. European campaign victory conditions. Yeah, it's just the standard regardless of when the war breaks out. So I'm not really sure it's terribly advantageous for Germany to kick this off early. Maybe we want to wait until 39. I don't know. I certainly want to take Albania. And I can probably take Poland later. All right, let's hold off on Poland another turn. I mean, we're way ahead at this point, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 6 is 12. 16. Subtract 6 brings it to 10. 11, 12. I think I forgot these. 10. And we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're way away from it. And, you know, if we can clean up some of these other things, as long as we have the economic powerhouse that we have right now. Of course, I don't know how much of it we actually have, because we're running low. We're running behind in money a little bit because of this big army that we're maintaining. On the other hand, the Allies are kind of in this real pickle here, in the sense that if they fully mobilize, they get almost no income at all, so they can't play in the diplomatic world anymore, and they won't be getting the research. So if they fully mobilize and can't declare war, they got problems, and it doesn't look like they'll be able to declare war if they fully mobilize. And they also won't be able to build their battleships or anything else. They just get kind of in this horrible rut, and that's what's happened to them. They lost their civilian factories, so they can't build navies. I don't know. I don't understand what's represented there. But Germany, by being, you know, a factory ahead and having all these trade deals, is in a very, very strong position where they want to delay this out. And if they're going to be playing with the same victory conditions no matter when the war starts, they want it to start pretty late. So, yeah, we're going to hold off on Poland. Now, what's up with Italy? Italy's got to defeat Albania. I don't know how that works. I've read it before, but I'll get back to you when I have knowledge of how that works. It's based on the resistance level of the country. Now, the resistance level of the country is 2. +1 for Greece puts it to 3. We don't draw an extra chit for this. -4 puts it down to negative, and then we've got a trade agreement here that helps attack the Albanians. Which means we're going to be at a zero, so there's no cost for the Italians. They gain control of Albania, which doesn't... Oh, there it is. So I get another diplomatic check. And now we look up what the effects of gaining control of Albania were. The Italian support level is increased by 1 in the turn following. I mean, this is such a minor... So Italy... I gotta find the chits. Well, I don't know. They're somewhere. Can't fucking find them. There it is. I don't know why we just have this and there's no Yugoslavian ones. Italy goes up. What happens if we take Yugoslavia? I guess we don't get a bonus. Interesting. Other people do. France and Britain are also going to get a bonus to theirs, but I don't want to do this online. They get their activity counter. They're going to get an extra random event, so we give them a little +1 marker here to remind us to draw an extra event. They can now start attacking Greece or Yugoslavia if they wish. Greece is the easier of the two, especially since I have bordering territories in Bulgaria, Turkey, and Albania. Actually, might be taking Greece out. Wow, nasty Italy. And the English and French each get a support for the next turn, and they're going to get another activity counter. Not that they have the money to use those activity counters. So that's the end of 37. Neat events. In particular, I like the Russian one here, which gave them a huge number of support points because it came late in the game when they have a lot of armored support and a lot of armored research already done. So they got a big support bonus off that, but also a purge point off of it. And it's kind of not the kind of thing you'd expect a purge to come from. I may have missed some purge events just because, you know, they didn't seem obviously to be purges, if something like this counts as one. But anyway, what I'm really troubled by, I just did the income phase. I still don't understand quite how these tiles work, but I don't think you can take, if you can't get the proper mix of money, I don't think you can take the tiles. Russia has a suspicious amount of money, but I think I checked them. It just seems like there aren't enough tiles up there left anymore. But anyway, the Allies are in this horrible, horrible conundrum in that trying to make the decision, do you want to mobilize another factory? They can do it. But if they do it, their income goes down. They become weaker and weaker relatively to the Germans. But presumably, you know, they could hit this support level, I guess. Beyond that, I'm not sure what really helps, because what they need to do is they need to outproduce the Germans, and they can't do that. The Germans have kept their income up high, and the Allies sort of are in a position where they're not allowed to declare war because they're not strong enough, and they're getting weaker by the moment. And I feel like the Germans have kind of gotten complete control of the game. It may have something to do with cheating I did. For example, I realized I couldn't do what I did in some cases where I threw all 3 military units. Now, that wasn't early in the game, and I don't know how much of effect it really had. I also can't use this and a diplomatic effect, and I think I tried to do that once. I think I may have pulled back from it, but I'm not sure. You know, there's a lot of little prohibitions like that maybe I favored the Axis powers with. There might be things I favored the Allies with as well, though. They're just not sticking in my head as recent, and it's clear that the Axis have control of the game right now. Basically, I can't find anything the Allies can do to turn things around easily. Because you have to reach that threshold. And that threshold becomes harder and harder to reach as the other power can produce more and get more points over here. So I think we're going to probably run through 40. And I see that as a huge advantage because, you know, I delay Japan, which is really a weakness as far as I'm concerned. The later the Japanese war happens, the better it is for the Axis as a whole. But you want it to kind of be called in at the same time. I don't know how to put this, but basically Japan is likely to start causing problems for the European Axis by their actions, etc., raising tensions. And I don't really know the mechanism for U.S. entry in this game the way I remember WIF, because I just played WIF, but I think it's similar in the sense that there's some kind of overlapping effects across the two theaters. It's not, each theater is judged individually, but I think there's some value when one Axis power is taking aggressions and affecting the others. Also, I guess the only thing that we really kind of get hurt by dragging time in Gathering Storm out more is the Russians. But we're outproducing the Russians. It's just they might reach full cohesion if we stretch this to 40, or I don't know that we can't stretch it beyond. I mean, normally a game ends at the time, but this ends in World War II, and there's no way around that. And I'm not sure, certainly if you were just playing Gathering Storm, you could end it now and say, look, the Axis won, or Germany won, or whatever, but we're not just playing Gathering Storm. We're looking to get the ultimate advantages that we can for a world at war. And I think we're going to be walking in with a very, very strong Axis point of view. And hey, that's not too different from when I played Whiff in Days of Decision, right? But here, I feel handcuffed in as the Allies in a way that I did not in Days of Decision. I didn't feel like there was ever a position where, oh shit, I'm not able to keep up anymore, So here, after spring of '38, push forward. Another rule screw up that I caught earlier but didn't. These Russian subversion effects, they say intel. There's no results on them. Well, it turns out you get the results on each level, not step, I think. I can't remember the terminology differences on those because they're so unimportant for the most part within the play of the game. But yeah, I mean, you kind of wish that instead of marking it as pluses, which maybe this is also going to be a factor, that it would tell me I get a result, so I actually get a chip on that. I'm not sure. Maybe the other things are stated the same way. The other intelligence options are stated the same way. Just a matter of the damn play aids just not helping you figure out what the hell's going on. So, for example, here in research results, yeah, I'm seeing results on these as opposed to steps. But, this is just the weirdest thing to, do one as results and the other as steps and not mark a result and realize, oh, geez, you're supposed to get a counter in with that. Anyway, I threw them all into Turkey, but that's okay because the Germans had put the anti-Comintern into place there. So it kind of canceled it out. Chances are the Russians actually got, if anything, a slight advantage out of being able to clump them together and throw them in at once. Although maybe if they had trickled them in earlier, it would have had, I don't know, some... I mean, it had no effect, so what the hell, right? Meanwhile, the Axis is taking advantage of its higher wealth, higher income, cutting into Spain, into Sweden. The one bad thing that happened for them, Italy might have been able to start a war, start an attack on Yugoslavia without a war happening. But random events cut their support over there in Yugoslavia. So they're now, they're kind of in the maybe foundering situation as well. Their economics are not really any better than the Western Allies. But anyway, we'll move on, keep going. The Axis, especially Germany, sees no reason to start a war. We can start the timer by attacking Poland anytime we want when we've got a balance of power up around 7. Now, I don't know if that can really go off the map or off the chart or not. I'm not too worried about it because we were able to make it at 6, so we figure we'll probably be able to make it again. Anyway, I gotta hunt down what the random events were, so and things that deteriorate. So, for example, this Albania shit comes off. All these Albanian shits come off, and try to figure out, what I've got correctly. Russian garrison. This is always changing, and you got to keep track of it in the moment. So right now I've got the troops matched, but I'm back 2 for the German penetration of Poland, or whatever, So back 2 means I'm back 1, so that stays. These I think were from an event, so I removed them, so Russia's back down. This would be the one time when maybe Russia could have started a war or something, but I don't think they could. I'm trying to figure out. They'd have to do it, unilaterally, and that's tough for them. so I didn't even bother calculating it. But this was kind of a high watermark for them with 3 extra points of support. Well, nets out to +2, so they were at +4 there. That doesn't match Germany. The balance of power I don't think comes into play though with them. Might be worth looking at, because I don't know if they can start a war until Poland or the Baltic states are taken though. So I'll look. But otherwise we're at the end of this turn. Russia can only enter if Poland or the Baltic states are attacked, if Poland's under control, if the Allies declared war, or if Russia's at full cohesion. And you know, they'd like to do it, because everybody on the Allies wants to get the war started at this point. They're seeing that they're just, you know, totally handcuffed in terms of what they can get done and what they can't. I wish I had set these counters up in such a way. I wish I had understood that these were going to be jumping on and off the board. You know, that these would get placed on the board, and particularly these national ones. And then, I like this one, I don't know even where it goes. And then would get jumped off when, and be permanently out, and I have no real place to put permanent discards. I guess I could throw them back in bags or whatever, but I don't know. We got these excess forces. You can see the Brits have a bunch of reserves because they mobilized so hard. Of course the Germans do too, but and again, I don't know, you know, is the chart again a limitation here? I don't think so. I think you can just keep producing units, given how Russia's chart works here. Their active units only goes up to 10, and they obviously need more than that. So not explained, and that kind of chart extension leads me to believe the balance of power probably can be extended as well, as far as it needs to be. So it's not expected to get that high, but you know, once you get control of the game, the other guy can't produce anymore because they made some errors. And that's the thing. You know, look, yes, I'm blundering through it, hoping to come to something. Well, this is obviously a game you can't blunder through, because there are some pitfalls where you can get caught in a trap where you can't extricate yourself, and the other guy can just dominate the game, at least as far as I can see. Now some more. So for example, air range here gives air or naval. I don't know what's up with that. It's got no results listed, right? But if we look at it, I guess I can put it in either air or naval, is what it's saying. If we look up the results for it here, air range is under 5 steps, takes 2 counters, one on the air portion of the balance of power, one on the naval portion. You know, I mean, you'd think that there'd be some indication that that happens. I don't know. You know, it's really disturbing to me that the player aids are so unaligned towards the needs of the players. Especially because the whole game is fiddling around on these player aids on one level or another, and that's what really, you know, doesn't work. Is if all you're doing is moving things around on these charts for the most part, and this is really just another chart with a map on it, it would make sense that you try to get those right, and in a way that works well for people trying to play the game. You know, I mean, yes, it's a new technique. You know, it's not like using the hex grids or whatever. It's a much more Eurocentric type of game. But and I do feel like, you know, the same kind of, I feel like I'm making the same kind of activities that I would in games like Puerto Rico or something, where I'm shifting counters around. Yes, I don't have that weird kind of action selection or whatever, but basically what I'm doing is I'm just laying down counters and getting a total and comparing that, and it's all these charts that are set up where I can balance out the things. Now, as a standalone game, it may not be a big deal that you can have a runaway controller to the game. It's a big deal if you're going to play a World at War afterwards. You know, I mean, at this point, I would be saying, let's pack it in. It's obvious the Axis have won. It's not obvious the Germans versus Italians. I'd have to look at the victory conditions for that. But it's not obvious to me what the result of all of this is in a World at War. And it's also not necessarily historically unbelievable is, I guess, the better choice of words. To say that, you know, Germany could well get themselves in a position where they can keep producing military and the Ally economies are stretched to the point where they can't really operate properly anymore. They're too geared up for the military. The odd thing about it, though, is that it's the fact that I have civilian factories that's allowing me to continue throwing my weight around, even in military things like building ships and such not. So that feels a little odd. But the concept that one side could handcuff the other is very much, you know, what is postulated to be the fall of the old Soviet Union, was the economic collapse from, you know, being put under too much pressure in terms of militarizing. Balance came out so that Italy is able to attack Yugoslavia, even though the balance of power is lower. Just the nature of the balance between Italy, Britain, all these minors, which maybe they could have done it last turn, actually. Yugoslavia's resistance is a 5. You don't draw a chit for that, for this aspect of it, and I didn't draw one for the other because it was automatic. That means it's going to be completed in fall, but the problem is the Italians have to decommission one of their active units every turn that this happens. So there's going to be an ongoing cost to this. We don't want to take the air unit because we don't have a whole lot of those. We're going to kill an armored unit instead. Normally you wouldn't want to kill an armored unit in a World at War because they're more expensive to rebuild. But here they all cost the same, so we're not going to lose any ground. We're so far ahead in the armor race that that's not a problem. We do have to maybe remove something here now. We do have to check those numbers though. That's 5, 6 right now. So 3 armor, 2 infantry. 3 armor, 2 infantry. There should be a German air as well, or an Axis air on that chart as well. I think it should have been there earlier. And we're running out of space here. We'll put it down on this row. Because these kind of count the same way, so it's just something to keep track of. And then Germany's still not going to go into Poland. And once the aggression is completed, we worry about increasing the effects of it. But right now, yeah, the Italians are going to try to take that over. It hooks them up to Albania. Maybe they can get Greece too, you know. If the Germans can keep the war from starting long enough, we might as well strengthen them as much as possible. Italy's going to be kind of a powerhouse in this game of a World at War, which is something Germany, you know, maybe would be concerned about, right? But it's hard to assess and analyze what the total output is going to be. It's less worrisome if Italy's a real powerhouse than if they're a weakling with a lot of BRPs, which is one of the potential problems. One thing I have to keep in mind: I've gotten enough results, or I've gotten some results, and this is one other thing that I just kind of blundered into. The Allied-French cooperation, each level of this, so it's like 3 levels, allows a transfer of money between the 2 countries. I guess, you know, those tiles, those are equivalent to money. Anyway, we'll push on. I keep going and see what happens. I screwed up the Yugoslav resistance. I forgot. These guys all count against it. So actually it works out to be a 0, which means the Italians did not lose the tank that they had here. So we can put that back on the board. This is the right one. And they succeeded in taking Yugoslavia, which I believe means extra counters for the Brits and the French. And Yugoslavia has actually fallen. I assume it's no longer susceptible to foreign attacks, and I have to fix a few things to the Civil War. I have to fix a few things regarding, like Italy gets another point of income, and what else? We probably have some counters to put out for support, which will give additional income to other people too. The support in place, Italy's able to go for Greece as well, I believe. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6, 7. Take away 2 for the Russian flags, brings it to 5, brings it to 1, brings it back up to 7, 6, 5, 4. I'm not getting the numbers now. I was getting the numbers before. Why am I not getting them now? Let's see what we got here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Drop it to 5. Put it up to 11. 1, 2, 3. Bring it down to 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bring it down to 2. Yeah, Greece isn't gonna happen. So we can't try Greece. If we knew about the French -2 here, I think we could get there. But I think I wasn't counting the Greek strength or something. I think I forgot the 4 points for that. So we'll hold another turn. Meanwhile, the Germans are basically, the Axis as a whole is basically able to run the board in terms of just, slamming in. We now have Belgium, Luxembourg moving towards them. Now, if that ends up cutting over, holy crap, that's going to suck. If that ends up cutting over, glad it's only a Euro-ish game and I can fix the pieces pretty easily. What we're going to see is, and it's because I have to have the rule book open all the time because I'm constantly paging through it to find, all the special effects, right, for each thing. And even just what I need to add, none of it really gels in my head because there's so much that's just these special effects. If the I don't remember what my train of thought was, but anyway, basically, I'm able to slap things down wherever I like. Oh, Belgium. Not only do I get the points, the money for Belgium, but when it comes around to a world at war, I might be able to demand access through Belgium, Luxembourg. That's one of the possibilities in the game if you get a good result at the beginning of the game, where you can just slam in there. And it's something that almost never happens in a regular game. Well, I remember it in Advanced Third Reich. It was very hard to get, and it's very hard to convince the Axis to put a lot of points in it. But it might be something where the Allies throw a few points in to kind of cover it, because it would be terrible if it did happen. If the Belgian forces just pulled off to the side and allowed the Germans to push forward. And yeah, that's right. The Brits are down in, I don't know, there's something under here. There's counters under here. Oh, shit. All right. I don't know what our economic climate was at or anything. I think it was at +1. This was out at +6. Anyway, we'll figure that out. Another thing came up, and now I forgot that as well. Something else having to do with another oh yeah, not enough counters. So we had the not enough counters issues with the Russians where we can't use them on the Shitas directed. Similarly over here, I've run out of Axis airplane counters. So instead of putting them over there, I've got to put them here. Just the total air support value is too high, along with all the counters over here, to represent them as you're shown to do so, I guess. I mean, you kind of really are shown to do it this way because they put the counters there. There aren't enough counters to support what's needed. Now, obviously, this is a game where the Axis is doing better than they should be expected, but it seems to be within the realm of the possible that they focus very heavily on airplanes, for example. Anyway, I'll try to fix my board. The thing is, the situation as it stands, with the Axis kind of running the board, as I said, this is really horrible. Because I can just run the game until, I don't know, whenever it is, 1946 or something. Yeah, Russia will eventually come in. So I guess I do have to make the move on Poland and start this crap at some point or another. But I think I can keep the Allies, tied up and unable to advance. I mean, they have trouble keeping up at this point. They're building shitloads of boats, but they have no real easy way to keep up. And I just feel like I've kind of broken the game logic. Obviously, any reasonable person would probably quit here and maybe try again. I don't feel like trying this game again right away. But I also do feel like using it as my World at War starting point. So, I don't know, I may end up playing it out until like 42 or something without starting a war. And we'll have a very short game of World at War, I guess. I don't know. Of course, cards that seem to be completely inconsistent. For example, this one, Army reports on readiness for war. French support level -2, max +2, +1 for each military research result. Well, okay, the military research results, I'm going to give them that +2. And instead of this -2 and this Yugoslavia that are kicking around. God. Clean up annoyance between turns. The game's pretty light, but there's a lot of little bookkeeping. The game's mainly bookkeeping mechanics. Okay. So, the French... Oh, no, it's only +1 because I can't find enough to get it to +2. So that's the actual issue here. Is that military is, I believe, this category here. We'll look that up. There are only 2 French things in that category with a total of 4 research results, right? Can that get us up there? Yeah, I guess that can get us up to the +2. So I was mistaken. Not too surprising, to tell you the truth. But I did the math in my head wrong. Italy had an event that mentions Greece, which I guess means it's a Civil War event. Otherwise, none would happen. And that's one away from the Civil War happening. But we put power in Greece, and we ended up swinging it towards our side. Now, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. +7 is 15. Greece has a defense of 4, so that drops it to 11. 8. And we look at France and we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which means they can't possibly get it. Now, France has a secret 2 extra support points that we don't know about. They've spent money from them, but, whatever. And so there is actually a chance the war could happen here. If we draw a 3 chit, France is going to be able to declare war on Italy. England is too far behind to be able to. And we only draw a 1. I'm going to say we went the whole way until the draw, whenever that is. Because France is just sickened. They feel like they're unable, to get a grip on the game at all until they can get things to the war. So now we see what happened. And actually, we ran through some steps. Glossed over them, but basically nobody backed down until the end. So the Italians started aggression. The Allies responded. If they didn't, there wouldn't have to be an issue. But they're threatening war, and the Axis says, screw it, you know, I don't think you even have a chance, but if you do, it's not a very good one. So we continued on. We were able to use additional activity counters. I don't know what we had. We probably each had a 1 left that we could have thrown into this. And now what happens? So we did not back down. So the Allies went all the way to an ultimatum and showed what they had, drew the chits for the country. I think that happens now. I'm not sure when that happens. This is when, you know, I mean, everything was pretty open until that point. Of course, the Allies have the worry that maybe Italy had a secret event, but we'd already played our event, so it seemed unlikely. So there was some chance. Yeah, it's checked when the threshold has to be met, so I think it's at the very end. And at this point, the Allies had to back down. They did not meet the threshold. So the aggression succeeds. The Axis gets 2 additional support, and each major Allied loses 2. So we have a +2 support going into next turn. The Allies each lose 2. Well, we don't have random events that say -2 on them. I think just the one that went into this would be involved. So we'll put that there. Have to try to remember, because sometimes I clean these up between turns, right? You know, it's like, well, I'm between turns. Those markers have to go away. So I'm never sure if I keep them all. Where are we again? It says each Allied power. I don't feel like allies that didn't make an ultimatum should be allowed. Okay. And yeah, it looks like they're both affected by this. It looks like the French failure affects the Brits, so I got to dig up a -2 counter for the Brits too. And both the Brits and the French are going to lose their 2-point counter, but we'll give the British 2-point counter. Well, we'll give the French one over to the Italians. They get to use an extra activity counter. Hopefully they'll spend it on something that's not diplomacy, because it'll be pretty obvious if it's diplomacy. There's no other war going on. And now we look up the successes for a Greek. Well, first let's look at the defenses for Greece. Greece has a defense of 4, and I've got more than 4, so we take Greece automatically. There are no markers. There's no additional marker for Greece. So basically the Civil War gets taken out of commission. I get the Pact. Greece goes Italian. I mean, basically the Axis has free reign here, but I do get this, which starts causing some problems. That does max out at +5. That I know. And then we have to dig up the counters for the Allies to give them an additional support to make up for the -2 that they have. Although there appear to be strong reasons, right, to keep playing as the Germans, there is actually a major hindrance in terms of Russia. It's coming to the point where the Russian Pact won't make much difference. In fact, I won't want to make it because I'll have to give too much up, like most of Poland or something. That's not a world I want to face. And so then the question becomes, well, what if I ignore the Russian Pact? Well, I don't get any kind of free pass like I do with Russia, with Britain and France. They're going to be able to come to war with me. So if I try a Russia first move, like works very well in unconditional surrender, if I can find it here. There it is. As one of the potential ways of playing, it doesn't really work here. Here, like in many ways, you're bounded to, I've got to play this very much like World War II happened. You know, I can't go trying to intervene and take over Spain or, you know, whatever. I can't attack Bulgaria or something like that. What I have to do is I'm stuck with a limited number of countries I can conquer, which is very different from the with Axis empires, even unconditional surrender flavor of things. And so I've got to fight on, you know, diplomatically, my Axis has to be very much what it was, you know, what you expect it to come out as. Oops. There's one less here than I thought there was. What you'd expect it to come out as at the start of, you know, Third Reich or whatever. And I don't want to mention anything later than Third Reich. Advanced Third Reich makes sense because the other games in this family, you know, included the Pacific, and this doesn't for ridiculous reasons, in my opinion. But anyway, if that's the case, I do want to go into Poland, perhaps this turn, start triggering that timer. But hey, I probably want to go in if I can get in for free. And that's kind of the situation I'm looking at, i.e. I can get in without triggering an immediate war and force the Allies to spend whatever effort there is. There's a victory point penalty to it to start the war. So right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 support. Because I calculated the Poland thing out, and it looks like they're going... It's going to break right around the historical. So 5 support points. Balance of power is 6. That gets me to 11. Okay. What about Poland itself? Poland's a 6, but 4 is here, so that gets me to a 2. And these guys each drop at 1. So Poland's a non-effect other than its draw. But we got 4 here. So that drops me to a 7. And what about the French? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, on anything other than a 1, they're going to be able to declare war on me. Is this a bad turn? Is that all that's happening here? You know, have I lost some ground here that I'm going to be able to make up easily? Probably not. But we do see there's a French support marker there. What we don't see is the Russian support marker here, but I think we're going to pass one more turn to see if we can slip in a Polish, you know, the Polish conquest without having to actually declare war, you know, without causing the declaration of war to take effect. This is dangerous, though, because Russia is getting stronger. They're at high cohesion, but they've got a long way to full cohesion. Once we get to full cohesion, you know, it's going to be expensive to get them over. So that's one thing. Russia's trying to gear themselves up, and they're beginning to look less and less attractive for the Nazi-Soviet pact. They actually get victory points for it. But, you know, honestly, it might make sense if you're playing a world at war to try to avoid getting the Nazi-Soviet pact as the Soviets, because, yeah, it gives you some time to build up, but it also really puts a serious problem in Germany's plans for the game. Anyway, it looks to me like we're pushing into another turn. I think Germany wants to go in this time. The reason is the Russians just got this Red Army leadership purged, -3 to their support level. That's going to affect the treaty. And war or no war, to me, the Nazi-Soviet pact is the more important factor here. If the Allies get to declare war this turn, hey, great. You know, we don't get quite as much research, but we've started gearing up, did another military mobilization, more troops coming. That's, I guess, 41 up there. just to keep track of things. And we don't expect we're going to make it through 40 without the war starting. We would like to upgrade our shipbuilding so that we can start cranking out ships as needed at a higher rate. We held off on that because it really pisses the Brits off, but if we're going to war, we want to do that. We didn't do it this turn because it gives the Brits a support value. And we want to make sure if we can get Poland for free and get an extra turn or two in, that's great. If we can't, well, that's okay too, just so long as we do Poland now while Russia's in a weak position. So, we've done the dip, we've done everything. We've gotten the Brits mainly out of Sweden. The French are strongly allied with Spain. We got the Brits out of Ireland. Belgium, Luxembourg, heavily aligned with the Germans now. The scary thing is Turkey being aligned with the Germans. I always like, in World War I, World War II, anytime I'm going against Russia, try to open up something down there. Now, Turkey is usually not very good at doing much, but it ties down some of Russia's troops, and that's all you really need for this. So, let's calculate it. What are our points? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, the first thing is we're going in no matter what, whether we're going to be declared war on or not. So let's take a look at the Nazi-Soviet pact, which, of course, we have to find the points for. So support levels is the first thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for the Germans. By the way, the Italians were able to, because of their extra card for their attack, were able to hold on to a card that would have dropped their support levels. I don't know how much that matters. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. To -2. That puts me up 9 right now on support. European Aggression Index, that's going to be 4 off of there, so I'm back down to 5. Flags in Russia, there aren't any. Finland, Romania, and Turkey, that's 6 points for my side because of the pacts. Russians don't have any flags. Polish resistance. Okay, Polish resistance is going to be 6. -4 is 2. These, it drops down to 0. So we're not going to gain anything for Polish resistance. There's a chit pull. The chit pull is important because 0 isn't that important here. The chit pull's a 3. So we're looking, and we're going for all of Poland. 9. The corridor alone is not. Well, wait a minute. There may be a reason to go for the corridor alone. I seem to remember there was one. Like if you don't go for the corridor alone, you don't get something. God. Okay, Danzig and the Polish corridor. We get all the effects, I think. I hope. I don't know. God. All right. So I think there was a manpower issue or something where I wasn't sure if you got that if you declared going for half of Poland to begin with. So where were we? We're looking at Poland here. 9 -4 is 5 -4. Poland is worth 1 point off of this. There are no major powers at war yet. Okay. So that drops us from 30 to 20. And when we look at the points, we have to take Eastern Poland and then 2 of these, say Latvia and Estonia or Latvia and Lithuania. I'm not sure which we want the more. And that's all we get. We have to go for the Baltic second, and then after that I think we have some flexibility. And we're forced to take it. So we'll be getting the pact. There's going to be some new counters added, some support counters, this, that, and the other. And that might actually influence the war standing. I'm not sure if it does. We'll see. It should, because the German-Soviet pact was actually declared before. It's just the secret protocol splitting Poland and Eastern Europe were not. These French and British support markers for the pact come into play after. They're one time. They aren't in play for the declaration of war here. So, let's see about the declaration of war. We already know what Poland's resistance number is. It's like 1, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 German support. Let's look at Poland. It was 9, 5, yeah, it's 1. So we take 1 away. We add 7 balance of power support. Subtract 4 EIA. Crap. I'm gonna put more things in play here. Oh, wait. Yeah, I see all this Nazi Soviet pact stuff, but this is the wrong page for it. By the way, I'm wrong. The Nazis or the Soviets will not be allowed to build their civilian factories. In fact, they're specifically forbidden from it. I can't find the page now. Yeah, it's here, the pact. I misread that. But now, what am I looking at? EIA. It's increased by 1 each turn. It doesn't say whether it's this turn or not. I don't know. Anyway, I have no idea where we are. Let's recount. And this is what the game is all about. Flip through the rules, find out that you didn't count, that you forgot your count as you're going. You forgot where you are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1 off. 7 more. That's where I was. -4, I guess. That means we're at 9. The Brits aren't at 9. The French aren't at 9. We're not going to, or anywhere near it, really. We're not going to see a war break out here. They don't have anywhere near the points to do so. I don't know if they see this or not, because it's used for negotiating the pact. Maybe you draw twice, once for the pact, once for the other thing, but either way, we can't go in. So there's no war, and Poland gets divvied, I guess. It's not really clear from what I've seen so far, so let's look here, see if this specifies. It's like so much of this game, you know. Maybe it's hidden in here somewhere. Okay, so we went for all of Poland. So we get a support level, we get an extra random event, support levels, Russia's purge level if the pact's not signed. The purge went way up, by the way. It went up 4 more points. So we're like 2 points away from full cohesion. We will not be allowed to build civilian factories, though, because of the pact. Germany gets an activity counter. We can give them that. There's Poland. They get another random event for 3 turns in a row. Some support activity counters for the Brits and the French. Not that they have the money to run them. Although as their support increases, they're going to have more and more money. So maybe they no longer want to declare war. So it's such a weird... Russia's support level goes up by 2 for the remainder of the game. Now this is already marked. That doesn't matter whether the pact's in play or not. The pact's been signed, so we don't get that huge increase. And we get an EIA marker for Poland, but we're also going to be getting one per turn, which you would think is this marker. Maybe it's one starting that turn. Maybe it's written the same way as the other one is. Okay, well, I don't think Russia gets Poland yet. I don't know when they get them. But I don't think they get a chunk of Poland. But otherwise, Germany has just taken Poland. Now, Germany actually has an interesting option available. They would be allowed to now repudiate the pact, take the corridor, and make Poland into a minor ally, in which case the Polish army shows up on the track as a further inhibitor for Russia. I think that's not a great idea, although that's exactly, what I tried to do in WIF was, hey, let's get the Polish army in there and let's take Russia on early, or whatever. But in this game, I think it's not a great idea. I thought these went over to the Russians. It's actually not even slated which way they go. But you would think if Poland is a minor ally of Germany's, their army would count against the Russians. And it's kind of green, so that's kind of Axis colored. But that's not made clear in the rules, from what I can see. All right, so it looks like we made it through another turn. And, Germany's still not going to declare war. And who knows when the Allies are going to declare war. Everybody's going to start mobilizing at this point. There's not really much more to do, but there could be some tricky plays going on, like choosing not to mobilize so you get more diplomacy plays and you can swing Sweden in your direction or something like that. So there's like this silly game of chicken that has been happening before and that caused this situation where Germany controlled the game. Well, it's set up again. If I don't mobilize, I won't be strong enough for facing the war. And so France, for example, they almost certainly want to mobilize another factory so that they can start building their troops. It may be too late if they get declared war on shortly. Likewise, Britain, I don't have to mobilize any more factories, but I have to start mobilizing my troops, and I'm short on money, so that's going to be problematic. And I really don't know if the Allies are ever going to be able to declare war. Oh, gods. It's really the case. If the Allies were really as handcuffed as they are in this game, you would think that Germany would want to create the satellite of Poland and go charging into Russia and just the hell with it, But as soon as I go into Russia, as soon as the war starts, the Allies will jump in. I only have any assurances that Russia won't jump in. So, we pretty much have to follow the Western first policy. You have the option to not do so, but I think it's a fool's choice in this case. And let me see if there's any markers. I wonder what that EIA is there for. Oh, for second attack on a nation. Russia gets to get rid of this stupid -3 that really screwed them over, and that's part of it. Is I got such a good deal on the pact. It has to be Estonia, Latvia, and then Lithuania. So Estonia and Latvia are turning over, and Eastern Poland, and that's all I'm getting any agreement from the Russians or from the Germans for Russia. Okay. I guess we load this one up. This is summer of 4.